We now go to Dr. Megan Woods, the Honourable.
Thank you. I just have some very specific questions around the money that's been pulled back from pay equity. In particular, the 1.8 billion that has gone into CapEx. Could the Minister please break down what was the CapEx component of that?
That related to, and I'm just going to speak slowly and invite anyone from the Treasury to correct me if I articulate this wrongly. Essentially, the Treasury had over the forecast period attributed how much it believed would be required for estimated settlements in each of the fiscal years. As the member will be aware, many of those claims had become bogged down and had taken a lot longer than, I'm going to get to the answer, Mr Chair, than had been anticipated. And in fact, the last government had faced that challenge themselves in terms of the way that the care and support worker claim had been calculated, and it itself had issues with that. And so what that meant was that there was a one-off cost in that fiscal year, which was no longer needing to be met because the settlement hadn't been reached. And so when it comes to one-off costs, that is more akin to capital investment, which is also one-off, rather than a continuating cost into the future, which is an operating cost. Mr Ruin, have I done that well enough?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. The Minister has said that significant sums, you've said, would be remain to meet potential costs of future pay equities. We noted in the supplementary estimates that there was $419,516 for supporting pay equity in vote health. Is that the retention money for pay equity?
I'm not going to talk about how much money we have put aside for future pay equity settlements. That would compromise the negotiating position of the Crown.
So the $419,516 that is listed on page 464 of the supplementary estimates, what's that for?
I believe that
well, we can go back. I'm saying it's a claim that's already been settled, which is why it's in the supplementary estimates.
Right.
Yeah, so there is $1.8 billion roughly of settlements that have already, on an annualised basis, which the Crown continues to fund.
So how much money is being retained for pay equity settlements?
As I said, I'm not going to share that number with you as it would compromise the negotiating position of the Crown. And I'd note that this was the practice that the government that you were a minister in also took, whereby you did not reveal to New Zealanders that the consequence of your choices had meant that there were billions and billions more being allocated outside operating allowances for potential pay equity settlements. You never reviewed those figures to the public because it would have compromised the negotiating position.
Is it your expectation, Minister, in the unfunded sector claims, such as hospice nurses, blanket nurses, those claims that they'll be settled from vote baselines?
What we have agreed as a Cabinet is that any future costs from funded sector pay equity settlements, that is to say, members, private sector employers who are found to have systematically undervalued and underpaid their staff per the pay equity legislation, in cases where that is found against private sector employers, we have made a choice that we will not write a blank cheque saying to them that whatever they negotiate, the taxpayer will fund. Instead, what we have said is that we will manage the costs that they may incur and the implications for the Crown from existing baselines or against future budget operating allowances, which makes transparent and visible the trade-offs that would incur, which is to say that if the government decided that it would wear the full cheque for a private sector employer who had underpaid their staff, that we would ask the taxpayer to fund that would come at the expense of other investments that could otherwise be made for the taxpayer, be that reducing waiting lists, increasing access to GPs, increasing the availability of emergency care. That is the trade-off that any government will make. So we make that most transparent by doing it through operating allowances and through baselines, rather than pretending that there is a magic pool of money from which no trade-offs are required. That's simply not the case, though we may wish it so.
So just supplementary. So just to clarify, you are confirming that for paying hospice nurses, blanket nurses, what the Minister chooses to call the private sector, but just in terms of...
Some of them are listed on the NZX, Megan. They make pretty good profits.
Hospice nurses, blanket nurses, to pay these workers fairly, we'll see further cuts to baseline funding for health.
No, I absolutely reject that. What we've said is that we have a pay equity regime in law, which we believe is now much clearer and will be much simpler for employees and employers to work through, gives those employers more clarity, means that they can deal with their specific claims rather than being bound into multi-firm claims of up to 90 different employers with very different workforces being joined to one claim, which was creating significant complexity for those individual employers. So on the one hand, we have made the regime clearer and more workable. And on the other hand, we have withdrawn the cabinet underwrite that was introduced in a paper by Chris Hipkins in 2021, which had the effect of saying that anything that was bargained at the table between those private sector employers and employees would be underwritten by the Crown, which resulted in the biggest spike in forecast pay equity costs, many billions of dollars, members, that we've said that is not a proper assumption to make. Instead, what we must do is that if settlements are reached and we think that it will affect the delivery of government services, we will choose how we fund that through the normal budget process, which sometimes involves discretionary choices from the operating allowance, sometimes involves reprioritisation with baselines, but is always transparent, upfront, and makes clear to the public the trade-offs that would occur if we were to fund private sector pay equity settlements.
So supplementary, has any money been retained, either as a contingency of its own or a between budget, or allowances made in between budget contingencies for any settlements that may occur this year? Or are you saying that if there is going to be direct funding, it would all come from next year's operating allowance?
Well, we have retained funding in a public sector pay equity contingency, which is available for any settlements that are reached where the Crown is the employer. And that is based on Treasury's estimates of what could occur. Of course, the legal obligations on the Crown are binding. So if settlements were to exceed what is in that contingency, the Crown would have to make other choices of how to fund it. However, we have based that contingency on Treasury's best estimates of what it forecasts those costs will be.
Thank you. We're going to go, thank you, Dr. Woods. We're going to
I don't know if my brain is fried or she just said nothing. Because I had trouble following much of that. What was she referring to?
I don't know. Flying pigs?
It's talking about private care and profits and you're just like, yeah, this is the realm of Dr. Gary Pionda at this point. Transparency, where like half the shit that's being produced hasn't come with a regulatory impact statement. You're cutting select committees out, you know, like with beneficiaries and stuff like that. I just have a hard time when following her where she's going from private healthcare to windmills to this to that, and I'm like, just
pick a lane and stick in it.
Yeah.
Don't be that zipper who has to sit there and cross 4 lanes of traffic, cross all 4 lanes of traffic between Aotea Quay and was it State Highway and State Highway 2 merge at Nowrong?
like, yeah, it's weird. It's like she jumps from subject to subject and then blames Labour and then doesn't give any like arguments for why her policy position is better than what Labour's was. Like,
from what you've just described there, I wonder, is Nicola Willis's either does or making herself out to suffer from ADHD? Because you can't decide which lane she sticks in, which is a common trait with people with ADHD.
I swear to God, she probably does have ADHD. I mean, I've got ADHD. I jump around all over the place, but it was hard enough just keeping up with her.
I know. I wonder what will come up soon about that.